guys, it's Cece. Welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to start off with some Raid Shadow Legends and talking about the starter champion and who you should pick getting into the game. The first thing you're going to want to make sure to do is actually download the game using my link, because that is going to give you an exclusive legendary that I've handpicked. So by using my link as a new player, you are going to get the legendary Elenaril, and you're also going to get Uugo at level 25. Both of these are very strong champions, are really going to help you out throughout the game. And they also pair really nicely with one of these starter champions, so let's start by talking about them. Once you get past that initial cutscene, you are given your first choice of picking a starter champion. And it's kind of a big choice because you have a choice between 4 of them, and you need to pick who is going to help you throughout this game, who is somebody that you will be able to add into your team that you will be able to make use of. So you have a choice between 4 different champions, including Elaine, Kael, Galek, and Athel, and all of them have strengths and weaknesses. Let's start by talking about Elaine. So Elaine is an AoE focused champion with a strong potential for critical hits, and I would say that she is pretty strong early game, but I do think she kind of falls off a little bit more with that mid game to end game. So her first skill attacks an enemy, and it does place an extra hit if the attack is critical. This does pair well with her next skill, which attacks an enemy and then all enemies, so it has the AoE aspect, and it has an extra 15% chance of inflicting a critical hit, which also places a 30% increased critical rate buff on the champion for 3 turns if the target is actually killed. So that pairs fairly nicely with her first skill, and into her third skill just attacks all enemies 2 times. So she does have the AoE potential. She has that potential to be able to crit as well, which is going to allow her to do quite a bit of damage output. But as I said, apart from just doing the damage and having the ability to crit, you're not going to get much else use out of her, so she may help you clear waves early on, but she is going to fall off a little bit later. Next, let's talk about Galek. So Galek, I would say, is a strong single target and AoE damage dealer. His first skill is going to attack an enemy 2 times. His second skill is an AoE, so attacks all enemies and has an extra 15% chance of inflicting a critical hit, but also places a 30% increased buff on the champion for 2 turns. So he is going to give himself a bit of that self buff, along with doing an AoE, which brings us into the third skill, which is pretty strong. It attacks 4 times at random and has a 30% chance of placing a 30% decreased defense debuff for 2 turns, so he is going to give you the defense break, but also has a 30% chance of placing a 60% decreased defense debuff for 2 turns if the target has more than 2 debuffs. So he is somebody who is going to really be able to do that damage output. He's going to be able to decrease their defense. He has the AoEs, so you'll see that he does have the strong potential to do single target damage, but also the AoE damage. The only thing with Galek is I would say he falls off a lot faster than the other starter champions, so for that reason, he wouldn't be my top choice. This brings us over to Athel. I would consider Athel to be a fairly balanced champion because of her self-buffing capabilities, but also her single target damage output that she's able to do. With Athel, looking at her first skill, attacks an enemy 3 times, and each hit has a 75% chance of placing a 25% weaken debuff for 2 turns. Her second skill is an AoE, so attacks all enemies, and has an extra 15% chance of inflicting a critical hit, so quite a bit of damage output from those skills. But her third skill, being her buffing skill, places a 25% increased attack buff on the champion for 2 turns, and places a 30% increased defense buff on this champion for 2 turns if the champion's current HP is less than 50%, and also gains an extra turn. So she is a champion who's going to have that self buff, have the AoE, and then have the damage output. So I would say that she brings a lot for a beginner player. She is going to give you a lot out of all the starter champions, and she is going to shine fairly nicely in some of the other content in the game as well. And last, we have Kael. I would say Kael is a strong AoE damage dealer, but also has the poison abilities with his skills. So first skill, attacks an enemy and has an 80% chance of placing a 2.5% poison debuff for 2 turns. His second skill is the AoE, so it will attack all enemies and has an extra 15% chance of inflicting a critical hit. It also fills the turn meter of this champion by 25% for each enemy killed. So if you are able to use this AoE skills where you are fighting against waves and they have very low HP and you kill them, you're going to be able to fill your turn meter even faster, which is really nice. but his third skill attacks 4 times at random and has a 40% chance of placing a 5% poison debuff for 2 turns. So Kael does have 2 of the skills which are gonna be able to inflict poison, and then also the AoE. With all of this considered, I would say he is a great contender as a starting champion because of the damage output and his poison, so he is going to have some versatility in other aspects of the game. So given all these champions, it might be hard to pick because as you can see, they all kind of shine in their own way. With all of them, as I said, there was kind of 2 of them that stuck out to me, being Athel and Kael. But my top choice for a starter is going to be Kael, and the reason for that is because of his poison. This is going to be huge when you're comparing it to other aspects of the game, but he also fits in perfectly with the free legendary champ that you can actually get by using my code to download the game. So we're going to go ahead and talk about Elenaril and why she would pair so well with Kael. Elenaril is a strong legendary champion who has AoE capabilities, but also has the poison debuffs, and you'll see that is exactly why she pairs so well with Kael. So going over her first skill, attacks an enemy and places HP burn debuff for 2 turns, and the debuff cannot be resisted. So she is going to be able to place the HP burn, which is really great. Her second skill is an AoE attacking all enemies, placing a 5% poison debuff for 2 turns, and placing a second 5% poison debuff for 2 turns if the attack is critical. So if you're able to get her to crit, she's going to do even more poison. And then the third skill deals damage from all poison debuffs on all enemies instantly. So if you recall, with Kael having the 2 skills that apply poison, you're going to compare those with her, put them on the same team together, get a bunch of poison debuffs on the enemy, and then hit that third skill and everyone is going to get damage from the poison debuffs. And you'll see that is why she pairs so well with Kael, and part of the reason that I would pick him as a starter champion. I don't want you to feel like you're missing out by not choosing Athel and having somebody who can kind of self-buff. So by using my link to actually download the game, not only are you going to get that free legendary with Elenaril, but once your account reaches level 25, I'm also going to send you guys Uugo into your inbox. Uugo is a very strong epic support champion who shines in a lot of areas of the game and is very strong to have on your team. His first skill attacks an enemy and has a 35% chance of placing a leech debuff for 2 turns, and the chance increases by 5% for each ally that's alive. His second skill is an AoE attacking all enemies and has a 75% chance of placing a 60% decreased defense debuff for 2 turns, but also has a 50% chance of placing a block debuff for 2 turns, and the chance of placing block debuffs increases by 5% for each ally alive. So the second skill is going to decrease their defense and be able to block them from actually receiving buffs, which is going to be really strong when you are fighting against an enemy and you want to make sure they're not able to buff themselves up so that you can do even more damage. His third skill is going to have a heal in it, so it removes all heal reduction debuffs from all allies and removes a random debuff from all allies, and then heals them all by 20% of the champion's max HP. So you'll see that he is going to offer support into your team by healing them, removing the debuffs, removing any heal reduction while also debuffing the enemy. And if all allies are dead, it's going to revive them with 50% HP and fills their turn meter by 50% instead. So he does have a revive as opposed to that buff if it turns out everyone else has died and he is still alive. But he does also have the passive, which places a 30% increased speed buff and a block damage buff on this champion for 1 turn whenever this champion's last living ally is killed. So it's going to allow him to hang on a little bit longer and allow you to win the battle. I do hope this video has helped you out in trying to figure out which starter champion you actually want to pick, as I do want to help you guys start the game with the best foot forward and with the most chance at success to make it a very easy beginner start for you. So let me know if the video has helped you out. Comment that down below and let me know what other types of videos that you want to see or what else you are looking for. And again, if you are downloading the game using my link, you are going to get the bonuses of getting the free legendary champion Elenaril, who is going to pair really well with Kael, but you're also going to get Uugo so that you have a solid support built into your team once you hit level 25. Be sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on future videos and guides, and I will see you guys next time. Bye! Next level.